Well, I hope for the sake of the nation that he doesn't express interest in the next election. Because for me as a leader, if there was any proof that he was unfit to lead that country, it's in the conduct which he encouraged among his followers.
Prof, I'm lawyer, sir. The pirates confraternity you formed, how much control do you have over their activities? You formed that. Peter Obi did not form the obedient movement.
I find what he's saying of late a bit contradictory and illogical.
Record. Are you obedient?
I am obedient.
Are you obedient?
We are obedient. Now my president you be. Me I want better tomorrow. Me no want to load, no. That the person will be me. If he want better tomorrow, no go vote to load, no.
I am a class go as you see me so at the front line no.
At the front line no.
But you want my no, make we unite oh, do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
Situation don't they get a CD. My brother, sister, get your BBC. Make we unite, make we vote to you.
Now my president you be. Me I want better tomorrow. Me no want to load, no. Not the person will be me. Want better tomorrow.
You know, because anybody on this earth who thinks he can stop me telling the truth as I see it needs to go and have his or her head examined. It's as elementary as that. But it was depressing to see those who wanted to be political leaders encouraging that kind of action, that kind of attitude in the youth. And my mind went to the expression, they don't know what they're doing. Those who sow the wind will reap the whirlwind. These very trolls, these foot soldiers whom they think, these myrmidons of hate, whom they've trained in that aspect. One of these days, they'll be astonished, they will turn on them and teach them a lesson.
What do you think of Mr. Peter Obi? What do you think? How do you think he can make it right? What mistakes do you think he made, and do you think he has a chance in the next election?
Well, for the sake of the nation, that he doesn't express interest in the next election. Because for me as a leader, if there was any proof that he was unfit to lead that country, it's in the conduct which he encouraged among his followers. Because I know for a fact, and I can give you an instance, that he was in control of those forces.
Can you please, what's the instance, Prof?
Well, simply because when he first came to visit me, he did come at one time. And I watched him. I watched his action, his body language. It seemed to be very conciliatory. But I remember the moment when he took out his computers, something, and after he made a statement like, "Oh, don't worry, everything, will be taken care of. You don't have anything to worry about these people." He was talking about the quote-unquote obedience. I remember he took out his computer, his phone, and he tapped, a message, there. And it shot me. I was watching him. It was anything. And after that, everything seemed to be, to be nice and cozy.
So he really did, yes.
And I saw and I read his statement about that meeting afterwards. The statement was a contrast to what actually happened, what we discussed. And I mentioned it in my response when somebody said, I can't remember what he wrote, but anyway, it was a misrepresentation of what happened. And I made sure that I put a statement out saying, no, I'm sorry, this is not what was said. This language never came into it. On the contrary, this is what happened. And so when I meet somebody who is incapable, even at a meeting which is supposed to be conciliatory, of being completely honest, I look at that person, and so I smiled myself. And of course, when I got to Stellenbosch and I was asked, a question about this, I repeated exactly what had given, quote unquote, given offense. Only this time I made it even stronger. I said, Peter Obi did not win this thing. So I led them again to go on the rampage. That's their business. And I went about my own business. So and there were witnesses at the meeting. You don't take my word. Don't take my word for it. There were witnesses at the meeting.
Yes.
He came with 2 people, and 1 person was, and I said, ask them. The statement he put out was not a reflection of what went on at our meeting, at that meeting, which I very reluctantly considered. It was pressure for me not even to allow him into my house. I said, why not? Let him come and say what he wants to say. I want to see him face to face, study him, leave him an opening, and then act on them. So that's it. I wasn't going to go into this, but since I see that you're curious, I have to tell you.
Well, in my place, when a man gets to a certain age, his children and relations always watch meticulously the level of his cognitive ability. So it's not unusual for a man of that age to start witnessing what I will call a degenerative mentality in his reasoning capability. And why I say this is that when you start getting to that age, your wise children will start limiting your access to the public so that probably people do not begin to witness certain degeneration, because it has a way of denigrating on the heroism the person has made in the past. I find what he's saying of late a bit contradictory and illogical. First of all, he went to see Tinubu and he said that he made it as a policy that he does not criticize anybody in power except after 1 year. It is only a man in power that his competence is an issue, not a man that is not in power. A private citizen like you, his competence is not in issue. In law,
It's not in question.
good. In law, the first thing you do when you want to address any legal issue is to identify the issue. So he's talking about competence, and then he's relating it to a man whose competence is not in issue because the man is not in power. And the man that his competence is in issue, you say no, you don't want to talk about such a man till after 1 year. But you're making it your busybody to talk about a man who is not in power, and you're talking about competence. I find it a bit illogical and completely out of the way. In law, if you miss the issue, every other thing you're arguing goes to no issue. He was saying about the competence of Peter Obi, assuming without considering that the competence is even an issue. And then he's basing the competence of Peter Obi on the actions of people that are operating independent of the exercise of the will of Peter Obi. I give you an example. I am an actor. I have a lot of die-hard fans that will defend me anyway, no matter what I do, because they are personally attached to me. I don't even know them. Does it make any sense for somebody to say, I am not competent to act because of the actions of my die-hard fans, whom I do not even know? No, it is really
Professor Wole Soyinka goofed. He misfired when he said that Excellency Peter Obi is not qualified to because his team is incompetent. I respect him as a Nobel laureate, but he is living in the past. According to Dati Baba Ahmed, that speaking English of the 1960s is not relevant in this generation. Point number one, I did videos in the time past that this generation will question everything and question any person. This generation, the Bible says, do not touch my anointed and do my prophet no harm. Touch is Touch in that place. But this generation, they can Torch the anointed, burn the anointed, and do him harm, and disgrace him. They don't fear any person because they've been pushed to the wall. They've been frustrated by the inadequacies and stupidity of my generation. So they don't have respect for any of us. So when you think that you are Wole Soyinka, you are a Nobel laureate, you are one person, you are bishop, archbishop, this, pastor, this generation is disappointed in religion, elders, disappointed in the politicians of my era and behind. So don't sit in a pedestal and think that you're a superstar. They will pull you down and tear you to shreds. We messed up. Again, this generation has seen what my generation has done. Point number 3. Professor Wole Soyinka is the founder of the Pirates Confraternity. I happen to have classmates, friends, neighbors, and associates in that confraternity. I have spoken in their Barracuda feasts. I've done lectures for them in my office via Skype or whatever, Zoom, to his deck in the United States in New York. The Pirates Confraternity stood for injustice, stood against corruption, and stood for the development of humanity and excellence. I remember when they used to donate blood and cook for us when the workers were on strike. They would cook, they would run the kitchen, they would control traffic and do so many humanitarian gestures. But recently, they sang a song. Hand they shake, leg they shake. Papa we not well. If they shout a Milo con, that's against President Bola Tinubu, a former governor, a former NEDACO leader. Your Pirates Confraternity sang that song, and another one with the Bala Blue song. What did you say? Did that disqualify you, Professor Wole Soyinka, from heading an organization? If you are appointed, would that disqualify you? I ask another question. Prof, I'm lawyer, sir. The Pirates Confraternity you formed, how much control do you have over the activities? You formed that. Peter Obi did not form the obedient movement. Peter Obi, if you are preparing a salt solution in the lab, if you want to crystallize salt from it, you just take a grain of salt and put it inside. Order the salt in the solution, maybe like potassium chloride or whatever, will start crystallizing around that salt. It's like the way pearls are formed in oysters. A grain, and then the oyster will start secreting pearly material around it. People crystallized around Peter Obi, people who were tired of the corruption, of the backwardness of our nation, the things you fought for this country to become are being desecrated. Those are the people who crystallized around Peter Obi. So, will somebody have disqualified you from winning the Nobel Prize because out of Pirates Confraternity, Buccaneers, Eye, Black Axe, and other ones, Vikings, derived their motivation and then the cult wars and whatever we are having in this country, would it be ascribable to you and prevent you from winning the Nobel Prize? Prof, sometimes we need to reason. We need to think. Prof, sir, I think you misfired. You are out of touch with reality.